Alright, I was just eating some Cheez-Its and I didn't want the munchings of my Cheez-Its into the microphone since that would be very rude. Noises can really bother some people. I'm one of them. So I figured I'd at least be considerate in that regard. So, we've had some ups and downs, but it's Saturday, which is the perfect time to play Elden Ring. Try not to play too much because I have a lot of other things I'm working on. But this is a build that I'm working on. So I get attack up for Night Invaders destroyed, 2 Balancer Relics, and I attack boosted but lower damage negation while attacking. We've got physical attack up, improved damage negation, and then I've got a stamina relic. But I don't know if I want to switch my stamina relic out for a physical attack up relic or not. I'm still debating that. Anyways, I might talk about some controversial things on the stream today if I can get 1 or 2 viewers, if any. And one of them is going to be NSPM 7. And my thoughts on this as a veteran and an atheist. Anyways, if we got those two, I'm going to do a Scholar run. My problem with NSPM 7 is that it's overly broad and it redefines things that aren't terrorism into criteria for, indicators for terrorism. And one of them, the one that bothers me the most, is anti-Christianity, or anti-Christian bias, or opposition to traditional family values. My problem with that is that the First Amendment guarantees the free exercise of religion, and it also guarantees freedom of speech. And I would argue that terrorism is a very specific thing. I'll see if I can find a definition before the run kicks off. Anyways, we'll get into that in just a bit after I finish off some mobs. Nobody likes an iron jar automatic. This should be good for what I'm looking to do. Oh, we need that. That's the last one. Anyways, there's method to the madness. We're doing this to farm up my ultimate. I will then use my ultimate . Goddamn castle. That is nutty. Anyways, terrorism is defined as... I thought that this was going to slipstream me up. Unlawful use of violence and intimidation, particularly against civilians. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I'm against violence against civilians. You know, I'm totally against people barring themselves in the supermarket to make a point. And so, like, were I to get to my point here, my point is that when you say someone's a terrorist just because they're an atheist, I would argue that that's not really a fair comparison to make. I'd ask, you know, how many instances of atheists being terrorists are there compared to Christians being terrorists? You know? Because I imagine you'll find a lot more Christian terrorists than atheist terrorists. I don't have it. He does, though. Shit. That's on me. But it also could have gone worse. Point being, merely holding an opinion is not terrorism. But what I would also point out is if they're going to try and play this game of arguing that atheism is terrorism, I would argue, what about the Steadfast Baptist Church that keeps saying that gay people should be shot in the back of the head? What about that? You know? Because my point is that they're going to be making those sorts of arguments. Like, why haven't they been punished? But then why are they focusing on atheist songs? It would seem to me that it's being used as a selective means of persecuting atheists and not addressing and not actually addressing terrorists. And that's my problem with NSPM 7. And I'll admit that I have said things that are provocative and that could be construed as extremist things. But I haven't said these things because I actually want extremist actions on people. I've said it to satirize extremists. That's the difference. A lot of my work has been about satirizing extremist beliefs or the illogical beliefs of Christians, Muslims, and Jews. And what I'm arguing on the larger picture is that when you have a religion that has passages like 1 Samuel 15:3 or Deuteronomy 13:6, you know, those right there are extremist beliefs. And they're in the texts of Christians and Jews. So my point, at least my bigger point, is that if we're gonna worry about atheist extremism, we should at the very least be equally worried about Christian extremism, which we don't seem to give a shit about because the Westboro Baptist Church have been thanking God for dead soldiers for generations now. And the Steadfast Baptists have been going on and on about how much they want to have the government do bad things to the LGBTQ community. So my point is that they aren't being consistent in their outrage. And it's their lack of consistency and outrage that reveals NSPM 7 for what it is. It's an attempt to protect religious extremism under the guise of fighting against terrorism. Because if they were consistent and they just decided, you know what we're going to do, we're going to treat all terrorism equally, and they would have started with the religious extremists, maybe they would have some sort of a point. But they've let religious extremism go on for so long, untouched, unsilenced, unfiltered, and then sometimes actively encouraged by the state. Point being, it isn't actually about an attempt to clamp down on extremist views. Because if it was about clamping down on extremist views, there are a great many religious people who wouldn't even be like operating on any sort of like grounds at all, because the feds would be in their asshole like they were a transgender porn star. My view is that I prefer nonviolent means when nonviolent means are necessary, and when nonviolent means will propose a lasting solution to a problem that you are facing. But as a veteran, I also realize that not all things can be solved with the peace, love, sunshine, Care Bear approach. Example, if some dude is coming at you with a knife and you have a weapon you can use to defend yourself against said knife, it would be unwise of you to let the guy into the threatened area of a knife attacker and then be like, oh, wait a minute, guy, we can reason things out. But if you're not in imminent danger, I would argue you should pursue nonviolent means when nonviolent means are available. Shouldn't want to be violent, nor should you seek to manufacture conditions where people might be forced to defend themselves against unjust tyranny. If that happens, I would say everybody has a right to defend themselves if they're being attacked. But we'd be better off if people simply weren't attacked. I hate Troll Castle a lot. Troll Castle is one of the nastiest fucking places in this game. Who are we fighting? Okay, this guy is... guys, this is how it's done. Good old ant spear rapier. I like ant spear rapiers. We're gonna put that there. That way I got ant spear rapier. What the heck? Press the button. Oh, you people are screwing me. I legit pressed the square button, but it did not register it, which is infuriating. Man, I was gonna hit my ult, and I got screwed. These people are fucking trolling. But they're not doing horrible, they just got screwed on the darkness. God damn it. I just wish they would focus one of them down. There we go. Really? I'm just getting shit on. So I get up and I'm dead. I'm just gonna hit this that way. Guys have had some troubles with this. So my $1 million idea for this build is I'm thinking maybe there are variants of Scholar that I haven't really considered. One of which would be a form of Scholar where you focus on defensive stats. So the idea for this build, were I to do it, is it would focus on increasing your survivability so that you could tank any damage that's incoming. And then, as a consequence, since you can tank any damage, and you can't die, and you can keep everybody up, you'll just win that way. What I'm sad about here is that I don't have more souls to spend. So yeah, as far as what I was saying, with NSPM 7, the issue I have is that they're overly broad in their definitions. It wouldn't be unlike if I were to say that you're a terrorist if you're a Christian. That wouldn't be an accurate thing for me to say. It would merely be me being bigoted. And I'm not looking to be that bigoted. I might make statements that might imply that sometimes to satirize Christians, but I don't actually believe that all Christians are terrorists. I don't believe any group is entirely guilty. If you look at the advantage of this build, though, the advantage is since I can build my ult up so fast, I almost always have it up. It doesn't take long for me to get the build. I can almost always keep my ultimate up. I don't need either of those. I do like this. You know, it would also be like saying that all Muslims are terrorists. And after being in Iraq, I can tell you firsthand, not all Muslims are terrorists. I won't deny that I've been harsh of Islam in the past, but even though I've been harsh against Islam in the past, it's typically been because of two things. One, I don't think that Islam is a rational religion. It's no different than Judaism or Christianity. And two, there are Muslims who do persecute atheists. And I suppose if you were to actually hear an honest telling of my position, it's pretty simple. I don't hate all Christians, Muslims, or Jews. I really don't. People might say that doesn't sound like I do, and I've said extreme things. And I'll admit that I've said my share of extreme things. But I've said this in satirization of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, which are religions that I see as having a large percentage of people who are violently intolerant of people outside of their faith. And if they're not violently intolerant, they have that view of elitism that they sometimes will get through with their views and their ideas. But the bigger point is that I don't believe every critique I've made. Sometimes I have just been resorting to hyperbole, where I pantomime their extremism and I upsell them one point, because they'll be like, you know, it's basically the concept of one-upping, just in an argument, you know. And the religious person will say something extreme, and I'll say something that's more extreme just to spite them and to mock them and belittle them, and then they'll be like, oh my god, see, atheists really are this intolerant and this vile and this horrible. And I'm just sitting here going, wait a fucking minute, people. You know? Like, I may be a complete bastard, but I'm not an RJ May. And when you got Christians trying to say that all atheists are terrorists because maybe a handful out of 300 million people have engaged in those sorts of behaviors, it becomes absolutely depressing to deal with. Because at the end of the day, if I were to apply their same standard to them, where if they are going to judge atheists by the worst of a handful of atheists, then I should be then justified in saying that all Christians are a bunch of goddamn RJ Mays, and they should all be charged for his crimes. Now, do I think that? No, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of Christians who aren't a bunch of RJ Mays. But I'm saying that what they're doing would not be unlike me accusing every Christian of being an RJ May because I'm RJ May. And if that's the case, then the president's an RJ May, the vice president's an RJ May, you know, FBI director's an RJ May, the head of the DOJ is an RJ May, and I could play their game. If I were to use their principles and their logic consistently, then they're all a bunch of fucking RJ Mays. And if a person could then argue that I just said that Republicans are a bunch of fucking RJ Mays, whilst intentionally missing the point, I point out that these people literally are too goddamn stupid to reason with. Which is what I've been saying all along, and people have said that I'm too harsh in my assessment. But I would argue that maybe, just maybe, I'm not harsh enough. Maybe I should actually be more harsh instead of less harsh. Because the bigger point I'm making is not long ago, conservatives were telling us about all the bad things that they wanted to do to people who are attracted to children. But now that we see how they're handling the Epstein files, you can tell that it's obvious that they didn't actually mean what they were saying. So long I listened to conservatives talk about all the bad things that they wanted to do to minor attractive persons. Yet, when you've got a president accused of being a minor attractive person and he hung out with a pedophile sex trafficker, it looks a little wrong to me. And it's like, wait, is the federal government saying that they're going to prioritize atheists who make edgy jokes on the internet over the billionaires who buy children? Is that really where our fucking priorities are going to be? And then they wonder, why on earth do people not want to be in the military anymore? Why on earth are people against the Iran war? It's like, I don't know, why is that? I have no clue. They're like, why don't Americans want to fight for America anymore? And it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with Americans not wanting to fight in wars in the Middle East that have nothing to fucking do with us and our concerns. And at the end of the day, I'm saying this in the most reasonable way you can say it. I don't hate all people just because they're Jewish, even though a lot of people would try to smear me as an anti-Semite for saying that we shouldn't be fighting Israel's wars. But I would point out that they're missing the goddamn point. I mean, now it's becoming a popular thing in conservative circles to say that they don't support the Iran war, as if this has always been their position. And it's like, you people realize that y'all have been egging on regime change in Iran for quite some time now, right? As if somehow what we're gonna do is we're gonna free everybody by bombing the piss out of them. How do you think Americans would feel if another country decided to liberate us by blowing up an elementary school? Because I'm not saying that people should blow up elementary schools. Quite the opposite. The opposite. I'm against terrorism. I'm against blowing people up because you think that God told you. And you know, I don't feel bad for being against blowing up elementary schools. God damn it. I'm not gonna play Alchemist anymore. Still, though, I feel like there are some things that could have gone different there besides me. I'll maybe keep that. Jesus, I was almost at 4,000 yesterday. And I mean, I'm not a fan of the Iranian government. And, oh yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I was saying, how would America feel if another country decided to liberate the American people by doing what our military did to a girls' school? And I'm not saying that to encourage that, because that would be terrorism, and I am against terrorism. Which is why the NSPM 7 label doesn't apply to me. I am against violence against civilians. All civilians. And I figure people might think that I'm this terrible, horrible extremist because of some of the satire that I engage in. Point being, if some other country did that to one of our elementary schools, what do you think would happen to that country? What do you think would happen to that country? What do you think would happen if Iran bombed one of our elementary schools? How do you think the media would spin that? Do you think the media would be like, our great liberators in the Democratic Republic of Iran decided to attack terrorists in an elementary school? We're giving them more money to liberate us and help us get rid of our government that has failed to secure our constitutional liberties? No, that's fucking nonsense. If Iran bombed an elementary school, it would be 9/11 all over again. Only instead of 3,000 civilians and bank traders and rich people in a skyscraper, it would be like 150 to 300 kids in a school, and they'd be like, oh my god, remember the elementary school that was blown up by Iran. That's how the media would spin that. There wouldn't be any peace talks. There wouldn't be any negotiations. There wouldn't be any of this show that we're seeing today. It would not fly. Yet, when the United States government assassinates the head of a foreign government and bombs an elementary school and bombs like over 1,000 civilians, we're expected to think that that's fucking normal. Sorry, it's not normal. It's not normal to bomb schools. There's a word for bombing schools. It's called fucking terrorism. Oh, balls. I pressed the fucking guard button. That's total bullshit. Okay, that was wacky. These areas are always a little rough at the beginning. But as long as you get them in 1 or 2 deaths, you're good. Yeah, my point is that wouldn't fly. We wouldn't want to be friends. We wouldn't want peace talks on day 1. This country would be out for blood. God damn. The brutality. Stop prolonging the inevitable and just finish him off. And I suppose really the bigger picture is this. You know, I did the military during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And you'd be like, ho ho ho, he's a faggot. And I mean, if you wanted to go that route, like, you can be childish like that if you want. But it would be to obfuscate my, it would be with the intent of obfuscating my point. I was also an atheist when I was in the army too. My point is that when I was in the army fucking hated me, you know, because of their policies and the way they enshrined everything into, like, you know, policy, you know. I'm not saying that to be an asshole either. It's just, you know, you put your life on the line for a your life on the line for an organization that hates you, and it's absolutely infuriating. And then afterwards, what happens is Democrats get in office and they suck up to you, and they thank you for your service, even though they screwed you on your GI Bill. And then, like, and while you're in, what they'll do is they'll demean your service. They'll be like, oh, this guy's National Guard. He's a weekend warrior that, you know, deployed out of Fort Living Room. And it's like, and what the fuck are you doing sitting behind a desk, becoming more obese, you know, practically fucking cankles? You know, what the fuck? You know, and then what'll happen is the entire time you're in, the army will harass you for being National Guard and being a weekend warrior. And, you know, these people have given their whole fucking life to the army, which, when you get down to it, is not a particularly fun employer. Working for them, the way I've explained it, it sucks hobocock. The army will be all fucking homophobic and they'll be like, oh my god, you know, like, we hate LGBTQ people, or you're not allowed to be open about your sexuality or we'll harass you. You know, you deal with that. But, like, being a dumb fucking Christian, that's 100% fucking on the table. You're allowed to do that because the Constitution gives you a right to be a dumb fucking Christian. And you could say, oh my god, that's hate speech, but I'd be like, no. It's not hate speech to use a descriptor and then to explain, like, to use a class of person and then a descriptor for that person. If a person is a Christian and they're dumb, then they're a dumb Christian. You know, and if a person's Jewish and they are fucking dumb, then they're a fucking dumb Jewish person or a dumb Jew. You can say that's anti-Semitic. No, it's not. It's a class of person followed by a descriptor. Guess what? You can be a dumb fucking Jew, and it has nothing to do with you being a Jewish person or not, because not every Jewish person is a dumb fucking Jew. And you can be like, holy shit, you know, this is hate speech. God damn it, that's hate speech right there. Hate speech on my fucking dick. Jesus fucking Christ. This game is so mean sometimes. I deserved that. I just hope that nobody gets fucking murdered by the trolls. These fucking trolls, man. They're fucking evil. Alright. And this is what I'm saying. You'd always be a dumb fucking atheist, too. You know, not that they've developed a slur for atheists. I also don't think calling a Jewish person a Jew is a slur either, because that's what they're called, you know? If I call a German, they're not going to be like, oh my god. That's hate speech. Only they'd say it in angry German, you know? Like they're going to send you off to the gas chambers or something. You can say that's horrible to joke about, but here's the deal. The problem with humor is it's best to keep horrible things in the joking stage than the doing stage. Once your society gets to the point where they start building the gas chambers, that's when you really gotta worry. And as far as like horrible jokes that I've told, I'll take it if he doesn't want it. I can put the meteor stick in the left hand. I'm making a point here, and it's a bigger point. My bigger point is this. I would argue that saying things that offend people is not terrorism. It's merely offending people. And as awful as people may think that I am because of things I've said in the past, I still acknowledge that the Holocaust was a terrible thing, and that it never should have happened. Oh, God damn it. Now, a person could say, well, if you acknowledge the Holocaust was a terrible thing, why do you joke about how the MAGA cost would make America great? Isn't that what a terrorist would say? Here would be my response. My response... Oh, that's fucking cool. I like it. Quite simply... is that my problem with MAGA is this. MAGA has essentially decided that they are going to conflate a delusion with objective truth. For MAGA, the truth is whatever Donald Trump says it is. And it's this, whatever Trump says is the objective truth way of looking at things that makes it a legitimate fucking cult. And the thing is Trump is actually worse. Well, MAGA is actually worse than your typical cult. Because at least with your typical cult, it's based on a specific religion with specific tenets and specific principles, and you can at least reason with it. The problem with MAGA is you can't reason with it. Because all MAGA has to do is say, we're going to deny reality on this particular issue or that particular issue. We're just going to pretend that whatever Trump's opinion is, that's the objective truth. Which is ultimately what makes MAGA so insidious. Because what they're doing is they're conflating the opinion of dear leader with objective truth. And when you conflate the opinion of a cult leader with objective truth, you then have a post-truth culture. A culture that does not give one single hobo's shit about objective truth. When a culture does not care about objective truth, you can't reason with it. My input seems to be slow because I totally hit the button. I really don't want to fight in the shit. We can finish the bosses off later. This weapon is vicious, and I think that with its stats it will be even better. You know, and as far as insults go, when I insult JD Vance because he doesn't have any combat experience, I'm reasonable in making that statement, because at the end of the day, I'm a combat veteran, you know? I actually went to a fucking war. I traveled down roads trapped with IEDs. I've shot at people who tried to shoot at me before. I'm a combat veteran. So I'm 100% justified in talking shit about JD Vance and his little tough guy mentality bullshit. And that's bullshit too. You know, he's a combat correspondent that never saw combat. Like, all I'm saying is if when I was in, I wasn't fucking worth jack shit as the National Guard, whatever the fuck JD Vance did, that's even less valuable than whatever I did. So, fuck JD Vance. If active duty soldiers don't have to respect the National Guard, even though they're going to get sent off to a fucking war zone, you know, we shouldn't be expected to all of a sudden give a shit about the Hobbit JD Vance. And I don't think that's extremism. I think that's just being a fair fucking guy. You know? Like, if 60 IEDs and 2 firefights isn't worth dick to the army, then whatever the fuck I did, you know, JD Vance's service should be valued at less than mine. Fuck you. I'd say y'all can suck my dick, and that would be freedom of speech, and it would also be objectively true since it would be in your capabilities to do so if you possess a mouth and lips. Really? This game hates me. As it should. Not valuing the service of the vice president? Guess what? That's not terrorism. That is protected fucking speech. Protected under the First Amendment of the fucking Constitution. If you want to say that you don't give a fuck about what the Constitution has to say, then I would say don't pretend to be a patriot if you don't give a fuck about the Constitution. And I feel like the game screwed me there too. People want to be like, oh, NSPM7, he's a tourist. And I'd be like, well, fuck you. Because there's nothing I've said that's any more offensive than anything that those fucking twinks at the Steadfast Baptist Church have said, or the Steadfast Baptist Church have said, or the Westboro Baptists. I got a little fucking crazy with my speech there, because I was like, I think you get the point. Like, people could be like, oh my god, this guy's fucking unhinged and he's got dementia because he stutters. Well, I'm still more fucking coherent than our alleged pedophile, pathological liar, and dementia patient in chief. And expressing my opinions about individuals whom I don't like is also protected First Amendment speech. So, fuck you. If you want to say, well, maybe there's that one time you said something that crossed the line. Well, what about all the times other people on the right have crossed the line? What about the time Brian Kilmeade said we should euthanize the homeless? What about that? If he can say that, I can at least make comments then about how we need to have a MAGA cost. This is about principle. If you don't have principles, you don't have shit. I'm kind of curious as to where these people are trying to go and what they're trying to do. I just feel like we should have killed a lot more bosses by now. This is a little infuriating. We're gonna be like level fucking 11 by the time we get to the final boss at this rate, and that concerns me. Yeah, they want to be like, free speech is terrorism. Well, that's retarded. Especially with them going and pardoning the Jan 6th rioters and shit. And they might want to try and say that Jan 6th was a peaceful protest. But out of all of the protests I've been to... God damn, dude, these are breaking my balls. If they want to say that was peaceful protest, then I'd argue that they need to shut the fuck up about the No Kings protests. Because what I don't see in the No Kings are people assaulting police. Man, this fucking sucks. How about that? Because the other guy isn't aggressive enough for me to be able to use my weapon. Like my primary. I'm just forced to Suncatcher all the time. I could do so much damage to the door of this greatsword. I'm stuck constantly keeping this fucker alive. Go here in case our Wilder wants... Well, we don't have a Wilder, but don't. Well, in case somebody wants to upgrade a katana, I might. Or maybe he'll drop a decent item. Who knows? I mean, the bigger problem with NSPM 7 is that it's simply unconstitutional as well. Like, it's not constitutional. And it goes against the founding principles that Thomas Jefferson introduced. Namely, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. Now, the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I would make the argument that the government is not justified in policing opinions that it doesn't like. And if a person's opinion is that the federal government should Kurt Cobain itself, or they should all drink fucking Flavor Aid with cyanide made out of Trump's piss, well, like, that's my opinion. humble as it may be. You can say that that's offensive and mean, but at the end of the day, where you'd be like, oh, you shouldn't tell people that they should unalive themselves. Well, I mean, like, let's be real. Imagine if Hitler unalived himself before World War II. Imagine what a wonderful world it would be. And I don't say that to be a mean person. I say it because it's the fucking truth. You know, say what you want about Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler unalived Adolf Hitler. And people could say, that's a very, very, very mean thing to say. You know, every life is sacred, but it's like, every life is sacred? Is it really? Is every life really sacred? Do we really believe that? And you could say that I'm being an asshole, you could say that I'm being a cynic, but what I would point out is that we really don't believe that every life is sacred, even though people may pretend that every life is. Okay. I did that all so that other people could focus the other damn troll. Did they focus the other damn troll? I'll let you draw your own conclusions. This game is mean. And you know, if a person thought, ha ha ha, we're owning the libs with NSPM 7, I would argue that it's not that you're owning the libs, it's that you're being a fucking retard who hates the fucking Constitution and who hates living in a free society. It's like the MAGA retards who will joke about Alex and Freddy getting shot. It's like, you dog fuckers realize that shouldn't have killed anyone like Riddoff. It's like, you dog fuckers realize that if liberals don't have a Second Amendment, you don't have a Second Amendment either, unless, like at that point, you having a Second Amendment, that's simply a right that can be revoked at any time. And if a right can be revoked at any time, guess what? It isn't a fucking right. It's a privilege that's granted to you by the government. If you think rights come from God, and God lets me have an AR-15, well, we'll see how fucking much your God gives a shit about whether you have an AR-15 or not when ICE is putting a fucking gun in your face and telling you to leave because they don't want any more fucking useless eaters in the borders. And you could say that useless eater is Nazi hate speech, and I'd be like, yeah, and guess what? I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm not saying I agree with the Nazis. But what I am saying is, you know, if the government decided that we were going to get rid of all the useless eaters, MAGA would be the first to fucking go. I see what happens. The game forces you to carry at a certain point. I mean, personally, if it were up to me, we would have a society that provides for the needs of all people, even the mentally retarded. But history has shown that not all governments think that way, especially when resources get tight. I'm not saying that to justify what foreign regimes have done in the past, but I am saying it to point something out of immense importance. America is just as capable of committing the same crimes. We think World War II, Nazi Germany couldn't happen here, and yet we're getting the retarded version of that. And a liberal could clutch their pearls and be like, oh my god, he said retard. That's a hate crime. As I see it, a lot of my problems can be traced back to low IQ individuals fucking up, which is the only thing they're good at. I don't feel bad holding that position. I don't feel sorry for it. I don't feel sad. It's the goddamn truth. Some people are only good at fucking up. Still, though, it was a rough run at points, but we did fine. At level 12, I finished that one out. Yeah, my point really is actually a double joke. Alright. And here's how it works. If you're not angry about the Alex Pretty shooting, you shouldn't act like a Second Amendment enthusiast, because it's obvious that you're not a Second Amendment enthusiast. If you think that the government can just take away people's rights because they don't like their opinions, guess who's next? Might be liberals now, might be atheists now, but soon we might be cracking down on homophobic beliefs. We might be cracking down on anti-government beliefs from a religious perspective instead of an atheistic one. Ever think about that? And how do you think Christians will react to that? Do you think they'll be cool with it? Do you think Christians will be like, oh yeah, come on in, take my guns? Probably not. My point, though, is that you shouldn't be willing to take away rights from other people that you want to keep for yourself. That's the point. And it applies both to the freedom of speech that would be restricted under NSPM 7, and it also applies to the Second Amendment as well. If conservatives can say, let's go Brandon, and have a fucking bumper sticker of Joe Biden tied up in the back of a fucking pickup truck, what sort of a message does that send to people on the other side of the political spectrum as to what is acceptable political speech and what isn't? Go and take the bird, although we've already fucked around. So my issue is that they just simply aren't consistent with their application of law or their notion of who gets rights and who doesn't, and what rights people do and do not have. And what I see here is I see the MAGA cock gobblers and the Joe Rogan sycophants all like going along with it. Fucking trash. crazy how much damage I got dealing.
There is no escape for thee, little pillager, bent on sacking the lands of gold.
I learned this. You actually have to program your brain to just block earlier than you block, and then you won't get hit in the face as much. I think the key, you just go, whenever you think, should I be blocking? The answer is, yes, you should be blocking. It's a crazy way of looking at it. If you're asking yourself, should I be dodging? Answer is probably yes. And we can even get to like the whole talk on Iran eventually if we wanted to. Because at the end of the day, I'm not the biggest fan of Iran. It sounds crazy to say it that way, but I'm not. I'm not really big into Islamic republics. At the same time, oh god damn. I also do believe that everybody has a right to self-defense if they're attacked. So, and to further clarify my position, I'm not cheering on the deaths of soldiers, because I don't do that. with one caveat. If they were a shitty person in life and they died, I would say it's a good thing. But that's because of, you know, like, Hitler killing Hitler kind of deal. Like, if the guy was gonna come back home and beat his wife and Jeffrey Epstein his kids, then it's a good thing he didn't come back home kind of deal. But if he was like just a regular Joe, even if he might be a little on the extremist side as far as Christian nationalism is concerned, I would make the argument that it would be sad if such a person died as long as they were a good person. Because that's the bigger point of my joke. I would argue that when shitty people die, it's actually a good thing. And when good people die, it's a shitty thing. Point being is that I oppose military conflict with Iran because of all of the lives it's going to ruin. Not just in Iran, but in America as well. People could try to pull that bullshit of, if you don't support our fucking war, well, you're anti-American. You're anti-Semitic. Well, that's bullshit. That is absolute bullshit. Because any person who isn't an absolute sociopath that has no intentions of fighting in the war should oppose war. War should always be a last resort. And it isn't extremist or terroristic to say that you oppose war, especially wars of convenience. And as far as the bigger picture goes, a person could say, well, if you oppose war, would you have opposed war during World War II? Well, I certainly wouldn't have been fucking itching to go. Yet, at the same time, I also have the intelligence to realize in World War II that you weren't going to stop the Nazis through diplomacy. And I suppose that's the part that's problematic. The part that's problematic is that not all problems can be solved by being a Care Bear. It would be nice if all problems could be solved by being a fucking character. That's my bad. I think that it's my view that not all problems can be solved by being a Care Bear that makes me fundamentally different than the liberals. It's unfortunate, but World War II and Adolf Hitler was not a problem that could be solved by going, "Excuse me, mister, I would appreciate it if you would please stop with the human rights abuses." That would really mean the world to me. See, that's pretty solid right there. Having 377 attack power now. What are we trying to do here? I thought I'd be able to dodge that. Not dodge it, deflect it. That's 3 failed saving throws right there. We aren't bad on XP. We've made some pretty good progress, so I'm not mad. Anyways, I figured out the big joke, I think. I think the algorithm will sometimes just target one player. figure out which one I want. As far as my view on the DoD goes, I got shafted on my GI Bill, so fuck them. Well, you could say, oh my god, that's a disrespectful, unpatriotic thing to say, but at the end of the day, I still support the Constitution and the rights granted therein. And if people don't support the Constitution, then they're fucking enemies of the Constitution. They can suck a big fat dick. They can suck a dick so big that God could not dream of putting it in his mouth because it would be too big for him. Anyways, my bigger point with Iran is that I don't want soldiers dying needlessly, nor do I want civilians dying needlessly. So I'd argue that what I actually stand for is quite the opposite in terms. I might believe that the world would be better off without some people in it. But that's just an opinion that I believe to be objectively true. And it's an opinion that I'm allowed to have. And think about it. Klansmen have been telling us that it's their sincerely held religious opinion that they should be able to live in a segregated society. They've been telling us that how long? How long have we been expected to tolerate people's bigotry under the guidance of religious freedom? Answer to that? As long as there have been religious people. Yes, please. So this is one of the worst fucking bosses. That dude's buff. All three of this team are. Hopefully he's got it. See, with good teams, the fights don't last nearly as long. This guy is an Everguard. You know, he's supposed to be like king of shit at fucking mountain. One of the tough ones. See, a lot of it really just comes down to team. Those people were fucking solid. That's tempting, but I'm not gonna go with it. I might use that. So yeah, that's kind of how things are going. I'm gonna go on a quick beverage break. I'll be back in just a moment. Yeah, what people aren't getting about the Alex Pretty shooting, as well as NSPM7, is all of these things can be turned on the MAGA base once leadership changes. So they shouldn't be so willing to sign away the rights of their fellow citizens. And I say this because, having served with Christian nationalists, god damn it, it was understood that I may not have agreed with religious soldiers, but I also recognize their First Amendment right to believe as they chose. That's sad. If you normally just go straight into Noxtella, you get rare drops early. When that happens, you're best not fighting them. Best off doing what they want. That was a good play by him. particular enemy? Suppose the bigger picture is this. I may have made my fair share of jokes about how the world would be better if certain people weren't around anymore. But when I make that sort of a statement, there's a reason for it. It's because this is the sort of rhetoric I've been exposed to my whole life about various other groups. So let's... I feel like these enemies should be dying before they're able to counterattack, but it is what it is. The more bold your team is, the more bold you can be. If they're not bold enough, you will die. That is the problem with such attacks. There it is. Easy win. I really like that item. But I don't need it. Let's see if we can get this dude again. I gotta find me a suitable stance. We'll just do this one. pressing the block button, but it's not registering. That's kind of annoying the piss out of me. Just not allowed to parry anything with this fucking guy. Not matter what I do. It's rough because whenever I try to block, I get one shot. It's probably because I only get damage mitigation when I'm attacking. It's pretty rough. Pretty fucking rough. That's very unlucky. It is what it is. I might do another 1 or 2 of these on stream and then call it. Because I can only do so much of this before I get a little bit tired of it. So, I'm going to eat some more Cheez-Its though. Jesus fucking Christ. Gaping jaw again. I fucking hate this boss. This is annoying. Church, then we go to the camp, clear out the invaders, I get my attack bonus. Hooray! It's over here. get it next time. We almost had it the first go around. These areas are always just nasty. Oh fucking K, this lag is such bullshit, it's not even fucking funny. It's complete bullshit. At the end of the day, I'm getting fucking molested by this latency. Which is infuriating. Absolutely fucking because I have to do everything way earlier before I even would do it. So I gotta be like a determinist about things and do things earlier than I would do them. It's weird because I suppose that's one trick that I don't think a lot of... I think it's a trick you can do that refutes determinism. You can act earlier than you would normally consciously act if you're smart. And if you do so, you'll almost always be able to fix a timing problem. But if you're too slow, it means you gotta act earlier, obviously. But if you're consistently too slow, it's probably an issue with latency. There's two types. There's game latency, and there's U latency. You gotta find out which is which. You don't want both to be an issue. You only want one, maybe zero, to be an issue. If it's game latency, you just gotta train yourself to be faster and earlier than you would normally be. Which isn't easy, and I'm an idiot. I didn't mean to do that. I really didn't. Damn me. So I really wanted that charm, but I was an idiot and bought an extra bag instead. Hopefully there will be next time. blocked that. The amount of fucking hatred I'm getting from this game. And the amount of latency I'm having to deal with. It's bullshit. Like, I clearly pressed the button to block it. I think what's happening is the latency is so shit that I can't even see a lot of these attacks before they've started, which is causing me to react late. It's just fucking rough. Can we do it? No, we probably can't. I mean, these people are having a hard time fucking Zamor, dude. I really don't trust him with a bell bearing hunter while I'm level 4. Fuck that. I'm skeptical. I'm going into this area. Yeah, I should not have done this, but I did. Here we are. Baby, we are born to die. God damn it. It's what you get for following bad advice. I knew I should have known better. deal with this. Fuck. I have 0 resistance. I can't. I have 0 resistance. This sucks. Like I'm playing a game of don't step in the puddle ever, or the puddle will kill you. It's pretty wacky. So yeah, anyways, I have a lot of issues with NSPM 7. But my biggest issue is that it's unconstitutional, as it's a First Amendment violation. It's against the principles that Thomas Jefferson laid out in the letter to the Danbury Baptists. And due to Marbury versus Madison, it was deemed that any law that is unconstitutional is null and void. I believe the specific wording is, any law repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Point being, any law that would falsely conflate an opinion with terrorism are two very different things. Because terrorism is unlawful violence directed at the state or civilians. And if we really want to get down to brass tacks, the argument could be made that the strike on the girls' school in Manab and the various attacks on both Palestinians, Lebanese people, and Iranians are all acts of terrorism because they are illegal violence. God damn it, people. We just wasted all that fucking time. What are we doing? Besides fucking this run. We go there, and then we go there. I mean, if I were to make a provocative statement, here's another one I'd make. If Greg Locke is allowed to say that he wants to see Palestine turned into a parking lot, it should likewise be permissible for me to say that Joseph Stalin had the right fucking idea as far as the relationship between the church and the state are concerned. And I would argue that that is a reasonable thing that a person could say. People could say, wasn't Joseph Stalin a brutal dictator? Persecuted religious folk? Well, yes, he was. Now, a person could say that that's terrorism, but I would say no, it's not terrorism, because that's merely an opinion. And a person could say, well, your opinion would lead to the incitement of violence in the United States if we decided to, you know, make like Joseph Stalin and persecute the religious folk. But my counter to that would be that Greg Locke's model likewise entails the persecution, well, and violence and death against people. And I would ask, why is it acceptable to say that you want to see Gazans wiped out, but when you argue that maybe we treat Christians like Gazans, well, all of a sudden now, even though I'm being satirical, I'm like, that's terrorism. And I suppose if I were to explain this in a way that's simple, and so that people could understand, it's simple. Get this crazy idea. Even Gazans, and even Iranians, and even Lebanese people are people. I know it's a crazy fucking idea to get your head around. And I know that might not be what you believe because you're a racist. But this is the problem, and it's always the same problem. The problem comes down to the white Christian mindset, where it's always acceptable to believe that it's okay to advocate for other people to be persecuted, and it's always acceptable to call anybody but you a terrorist. But when other people start making the same allegations back, all of a sudden it's a great big problem that needs to be taken care of. It's hypocrisy is what it is. And nobody is better at hypocrisy than far-right Orthodox Jews and evangelical Christians. I'm not being anti-Semitic in the least here, because I'm arguing that this is something that evangelical Christians and far-right Orthodox Jews have in common. They think that the rules apply to everybody except them, and that's the problem. Because what we aren't seeing is NSPM 7 being crafted to go against people who are pro-Iranian genocide or pro-Palestinian genocide. You know, if a person's against Palestinians and Iranians, that's perfectly okay, according to the powers that be. It's just when you start acting, like when you start arguing that the same logic should be turned upon Christians and Jews, that all of a sudden it becomes terrorism in their own view. And the reason for that is because they're hypocrites. They are hypocrites that lack anything resembling logical consistency. Because if the focus really was on harmful rhetoric, they'd be just as quick to go after Christians advocating for hate speech or violence against non-Christians. But they're not. They're not going after the Steadfast Baptist Church. They're not forcing the Westboro Baptists to hide in the attic like Anne Frank. They're going after a group that historically has low rates of terrorism and political violence. So yeah, my message on the NSPM 7 thing would be for the government to follow its own goddamn standards. And maybe instead of, like, pardoning Jan 6thers who assaulted police, you know, they should be arresting them instead. Well, hopefully this goes decent. That's a good start. But at what cost? Hopefully, he can use an ult or something. I'm really effing low right now. it's unfortunate, but that's the note that I'm going to end it on. My point with MAGA and with the right is that NSPM 7 is just blatant hypocrisy. Because at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is that they're willing to excuse it from their own side, but when it comes to the other side, they have a problem with it. And that's the issue. You know? If Donald Trump can celebrate the death of Robert Mueller, it should be acceptable for everybody else to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk. You know? And this whole idea of that they're going to try and like make it considered terrorism to be an atheist or to promote atheism, I think we should just bite the bullet once this craze wears down and go full fucking Stalin. And you can say that sounds fucked up and it sounds mean, but I would argue that their own standards should be turned on them. Because if they start locking people up like me over NSPM 7 because we're atheists and we don't like the government, the same should apply to Christians who don't like the government. Standards should be applied equally, or they shouldn't be applied at all. That's the issue. But anyways, the bigger point is that promoting atheism is not terrorism, and neither is broaching controversial subjects. Anyways, I'll do more of this in the future, but for now, I'm done, and I can't do any more. Well, this is the NSPM special episode, and basically how the whole deal of NSPM 7 is that it's retarded bullshit, because they have no problems with Christians and MAGA being terrorists.